Hello, everybody. We're so happy and excited to be here, all of us together. I want to start just for 1 minute to highlight that while we're all of us are together here, we are thinking about the current situation that we're experiencing in the Ukraine. We do have, over 200,000 members of the Jewish community trapped in a war-torn situation that is not of their making. But unfortunately, and as part of where we are right now in the 60-day challenge, it is the Federation and all of the federations together who are raising money every year to have our partners on the ground today, to have our partners on the ground tomorrow, and to have our partners on the ground in the future who are able to help the people who are trapped in the Ukraine, whether it's trying to get them out or providing with food and medicine and groceries and everything that they need in order for us to care for each other. And I was blown by some of the quotes that I saw in Ari's book, which we're going to introduce them in a minute, about our responsibility for all of us to take care of each other. And that's our responsibility that we as a federation carry every day. It is our responsibility as Jews to take care of those that we know and those who we don't. So I encourage you, if you haven't made your contribution, right now is even more important than ever. We are able to send the money right away because we're being able to collect the money from past years, and JFNA and our partners at JDC and Ward Ord are on the ground in the Ukraine right now, making a huge difference, and it's all thanks to your support.
I don't know why my picture isn't showing.
So I don't want to belittle too much on the subject because we're here to welcome one of Alan Downs' own sons and super fan for many of the men and women who are here today speaking about Ari for the past month and a half. How excited we are to see Ari back, even if it's virtually in the Lehigh Valley, and being one of the first communities who get to hear him speak about his first book. I can say, Ari works at Nexus of Politics, Policymaking, and the press in Washington, D.C., although he's currently in Miami. He is proficient both in Biblical Hebrew and in modern Hebrew, and that's probably thanks to a wonderful education at the Jewish Day School of the Lehigh Valley, where he attended. And most important from us is that Ari is a native son of the Lehigh Valley, and he's back here again to talk about his book, Paths of the Righteous. And we have, there is the book, I'm sorry, filter, I don't know, it doesn't let me show it. I do have a couple more copies of the book. If you haven't received a copy, call the office. We'll be happy to put something in reserve for you. Ari did sign the book, so it's a wonderful opportunity for you to have the book. I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to let Ari introduce his book and introduce our two wonderful speakers who are here to talk about their own paths of righteousness. Ari, please.
Aaron, thank you so much, and to Jerry certainly as well. I was fortunate enough in 2002 and then again in 2004 to spend Pesach, the holiday of Passover, with the Jewish community of Kharkiv. And unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons, I think the entire world now is familiar with Ukraine's second largest city. So to the extent that folks are familiar with Tehillim, Psalms, I would encourage you maybe to think about that and recite a psalm or two this evening. I actually subsequently went back on my own several times over Hanukkah to Kharkiv. So it's been a long and emotional day, but I was very much looking forward to this. We have, with the 8 individuals I have been honored to get to know and I profile in my book, we've been doing events in person and virtually around the country, but this, for so many reasons, in the Lehigh Valley or via Zoom in the Lehigh Valley is particularly special. The fact that I think I saw my first grade teacher and my third grade teacher and the principal of the day school, I literally learned how to read and write because of each of you. So thank you. I was told, though, we did some in-person book signings last week. I'm in Florida, as was mentioned, in Palm Beach and in Coral Gables, and then we went to the Posnack Jewish Day School, and folks said you write like a third grader. So my penmanship may be wasn't something I was so good at when I was at the day school. So last week actually was my daughter's 22nd birthday, and that's months, not years. And even before what happened, the tragedy in Texas last month, I was really thinking, as was my wife, what's it going to mean when she's actually 22 years old, 2 decades from now? To have an overtly Hebrew name, to grow up in a home that cares deeply about our faith, that cares deeply about the U.S.-Israel relationship. And in short, that's how this book project began about 2 years ago. The truth is I didn't set out to write a book, but the truth is I never thought what happened at Tree of Life in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh, a community that I've gotten to know very well over the years. I never thought that was going to happen. I grew up in South Whitehall Township, right over the Allentown line, walking about 20 minutes each way to Sons of Israel every Shabbos, every Yontif, Sabbath and holidays. And I cannot, maybe I just am blissfully ignorant. I cannot remember a single instance of anti-Semitism. I cannot remember in the 90s, in the 80s, any sort of armed presence at Sons of Israel. And certainly the community knows that's a very different situation now. So we, what happened the last day of Pesach in 2019, my wife and I were in Israel, and news very quickly spread about what happened in San Diego, in Poway, California. And it was a tough time. It was an emotional time, and it would have been very easy, I think, to be pessimistic, to wallow in my sadness. As this community knows, I had lost my mother shortly after the tragedy in Pittsburgh. And look, we have a home gym. That was my first outlet. I joke that a 100-pound punching bag that I bought many years ago is the best investment I've made. But that only gets you so far. So much to my surprise, and my father says that there's no word for coincidence in the Tanakh and biblical Hebrew. So it wasn't coincidental, but much to my surprise, about 2 weeks after that tragedy in San Diego, Aston Bright came to my adopted community, my home community now in Pikesville, Maryland. And he was speaking at a program, and I frankly had no interest, zero interest in attending. I had been in a suit and tie running around for work for more than 12 hours. And my wife said, like any good Jewish program, it's going to have some good sushi and some catering. So I said, all right, fine, I'll come for 5 minutes. I'm not kibitzing with anyone. I want nothing to do with this. And Aston started talking. And this was 2 weeks after the shooting in Poway, and I was feeling pretty down in the dumps. Still wanted to be in Israel from that incredible trip over Pesach we had. And I stayed. I stayed for what was a 2-hour program, and then had many long conversations with Aston afterward. And hearing that super inspiring story, it led me to realize there's actually all sorts of non-Jews that I've met that have really been doing out of the headlines, unheralded, amazing work for our community during what I think has been a fairly dark time. I learned way back when at the day school a lot. I think my favorite subject, I had this conversation with day school students last month, and with Posnack day school students down in Broward County last week. What was my favorite subject? And I think American history is it. And I'm reminded of, and I'll close with this before I introduce Gloria. I'm reminded of 2 quotes, one secular, one Hebrew. So American history quote, President Kennedy famously said, "We're not here to curse the darkness, but to light a candle." And that's really kind of the, if I had to summarize while standing on one foot, so to speak, my book, that's what I attempted to do. Similarly, I can't pinpoint when, but probably sometime in the first few grades of the Jewish day school, I was taught, and we really learned, it was, I think, the kind of ethos of the curriculum, the line from Yeshayahu, from the prophet Isaiah, that we should be a light, the Jewish community should be a light unto the nations. And so what I attempted with my book, similar to President Kennedy's quote, was to turn that upside down. saying, look, it's pretty damn dark out there for the Jewish community. Who are the non-Jewish luminaries who are providing light to us? So I had, I had always been curious about Guatemala because of many seders and Shabbos dinners with the Fishman family in this community. And then I think we all remember, and we're going to hear in really exciting detail from Gloria, that just 2 days, right the same week that the U.S. moved its embassy to Jerusalem, Guatemala did as well. So she and I have become fast friends, but she was super inspiring. We got to know each other during the beginning of the pandemic. And I should also say that Gloria, I think, attends more Jewish and pro-Israel events in South Florida than most Jews in South Florida. She's splitting her time tonight at the ZOA Gala and joining us here on the Zoom. So Gloria, the floor is yours, and we totally understand that you're doing this from a mobile device.
I'm showing the gala for those who want to see how it is. It's a beautiful gala here. I don't know if you can hear me okay, but I'm stepping away. It is an honor to be with all of you today. I am so delighted to accompany Ari wherever Ari tells me to go, wherever we need to go, and wherever we need to speak about this beautiful book. I'm more than honored to be part of it. Tuesday night, we had a beautiful meeting with some students from Yeshiva University, and we were able to share our stories. And Aston is here also to share part of his story. But I think that many of you, as Ari told me, have already read the excerpt or the chapter where he speaks about my brother and I's, and actually it's my whole family, ultimately, our effort to get the former president of Guatemala, Jimmy Morales, to make the decision to move Guatemala's embassy, or to return actually Guatemala's embassy to Jerusalem in 2018. He made the decision 2017, and the story, as I always say, it's a course in miracles. It's not anyone, no one can truly take credit for having done that, but I am gonna say that I feel that Hashem gave me a vision and the strength to push through, to kind of be the catalyst behind making this, happen in a way. And my brother was the hands, I was the motor behind it, and he was the hands. And in a beautiful story, how Ari tells it, you can read a little bit of how that all came about and the difficulties behind it. But one thing that it doesn't truly cover, it's what happens once the decision actually happens, right? So the decision was on December 24th, 2017, which is Christmas Eve. And after that, immediately after he made the decision, after he had the conversation with Prime Minister Netanyahu and blurted out the words, I am instructing my foreign minister to make all necessary all necessary efforts to return our embassy to Jerusalem. When that call ended and he puts his hands on his head and he says, what have I done? And this, of course, I wasn't there when it actually happened. I got a call after from the advisor of the vice president and from the foreign minister herself to tell me what had happened. He says, what have I done? At that point is when the second challenge or the second wave of, it's almost like warfare happened, right? And I hate to use that word today after what's happening in the Ukraine, but the struggle began again. So he made the decision on that day, and that day, within hours, we were already strategizing as to how are we going to take this to the media? How are we going to handle the pressures coming in from different groups? Arab countries were calling the foreign minister. There was a big threat about not buying any more cardamom from the country. And there's 560,000 families that depend on the export of cardamom in Guatemala. So it's a big, big deal. And from there, it was one challenge after another, after another, after another. Even the way in which we were able to take the president, the vice president, the foreign minister, and some of the congressmen to Israel to actually open this embassy in May of 2018 was a challenge. And sorry that I got cut off. And I have to tell you that through it all, we saw the hand of God. Through it all, things just opened up in the midst of the forest. It was the most amazing experience. But my vision way back in May of 2017, where I visually saw, when I felt God called me to do this, and I visually saw my family standing behind President Jimmy Morales and the First Lady, behind Benjamin Netanyahu, and Sarah Netanyahu, and behind other friends and people from government, getting to that point where we actually saw the ribbon cutting. I'm the person standing in front, taking the photo that was published in so many newsletters. I'm going to tell you, it was surreal. And definitely, you have to read Ari's account of the story. I think it's beautiful the way that he tells the story. And I'm going to say that it was an honor to be part of that and to continue to be involved, not only among the pro-Israel Christian community, but the pro-Israel Jewish community. So here we are, and I always say, here I am. God sent me. I want to be a vessel in your hands. So it's an honor to be here tonight with all of you.
Gloria, thank you so much. Every time Gloria and I meet, I learn something new. I had no idea about the cardamom. And I should say that each of these 8 incredible non-Jews that I've gotten to know and I profile in my book, they deserve their own book, and not just one fast-paced short story. And the truth is, I think that there's many, many more chapters of Gloria's activism as she's quietly working south of the border in Spanish-speaking countries to replicate what happened with the Guatemala move. So one of the exciting things that I learned is that even though Gloria and Aston live something like 25 minutes from each other, and they're so deeply involved in the U.S.-Israel relationship and combating anti-Semitism, they had never met. And who am I? I'm not from Florida, and I introduced them. And for the first time last week at an independent bookstore in Palm Beach. But it's just pretty wild, the momentum and what's happened with this book tour. But Aston, as I mentioned, we met on a total whim. I think everything happens in life. The best things that have happened in life for me have been by happenstance. So I understand that I guess a lot of folks have read the snapshot that Aston I provided in my book, but I'd love for you maybe to share a little about what you've been up to since that second trip to Israel, to the Gaza envelope.
Thank you, Ari. I really appreciate that. And shalom, everyone. Shalom. Thank you all for having me here tonight. This is I'm very honored to be here. Really honored to be a part of this amazing book, to try to light a candle and shine our light around the country and around the world, to fight back against a lot of the things that are happening. And my thoughts are, of course, with our friends in the Ukraine tonight, with the devastating situation there. But I'm going to talk a little bit about my story. My name is Aston Bright. I'm a lieutenant with the Plantation Fire Department. Plantation is a community of about 100,000 people. We're just west of Fort Lauderdale. We're about 30 minutes north of the city of Miami, about 45 minutes south of Palm Beach. And in about 2014, my best friend, Michael Yavner, who's Jewish, he called me and he said that his buddy, Brian Strelitz from the Jewish Federation, Broward, is putting together a team of firefighters to send to Israel. And in 2014, of course, the Gaza war was happening at the time. And without really knowing or understanding anything about what would it be involved for me to do this, I immediately said, I want to do it. I said, absolutely, I'm in. And I've said this many times, and I think Ari talks about this all the time when he mentions me, is that little did I know what I was getting myself into. It was just an incredible situation once I went through the training by an organization, it's a Jerusalem-based organization called the Emergency Volunteers Project. They come to the United States to recruit and train American firefighters to send to Israel in times of crisis or war. Let me talk a little bit about why that's necessary. So there are about 1 million firefighters in the United States, and there are about 2,000 firefighters in Israel. Okay, so my city of Plantation, we have about 100,000 people, and we have 6 fire stations in our city. Jerusalem has about 1 million people, and they have 6 fire stations in Jerusalem. So I've actually worked in Jerusalem before, in the Jerusalem fire station right across from the Knesset. And it's a very busy city, a lot of calls, car accidents, fire alarms, fires, cats stuck in trees, whatever. There are a lot of calls in Jerusalem. So imagine trying to handle those calls in addition to a war going on or some sort of other national catastrophe. So when there's a big event in Israel, the resources are consumed very quickly. And this is where the organization like the EVP really comes into play. So in 2018, it was a Wednesday evening. It was in July, late July. Wednesday evening, I was doing what most people do when they have nothing to do. I was watching Netflix, and I got a call from Jerusalem. They said, hey, these fires that are these terrorist kite and balloons that are coming out of Gaza are overwhelming our resources. We need help. And to give you some perspective, in the city of Plantation last year, we had 35 fires for the whole year. 35 fires, okay? Between May and August of 2018, Hamas and the kite and balloon fires out of Gaza, they started 1,000 fires in southern Israel. Sderot, Ashkelon, Netivot, Beersheba, Nakalaz. The entire area was on fire, was devastating. And the most interesting thing that happened to me when I first got there in 2018 in the South, we had this big meeting with Shmulik Friedman, who is the Israel Fire and Rescue Services Southern Commander. And we're going into this meeting. Becky Caspi was there from Jewish Federations of North America, and all these government officials were there. Many, I think, were in the Mossad. I don't know. And they had this big meeting, and I thought they were going to be talking about us going in there and putting out these fires, and we're going to, kick in doors. We're going to go in there and take care of this whole thing. But what amazed me and what really touched me was Shmulik Friedman. He spent the first 10 minutes of this meeting talking about the devastation to the ecological landscape of the area. He was talking about turtles and birds and just the destruction of farmlands and crops. And what most people don't know is that Israel is the home to over 500 million migratory birds. So if you take a satellite image of the Middle East, Israel is a garden in the middle of the desert. It's the only thing you're going to see that's green. So when birds are coming from Europe heading to Africa, or if they're coming from other parts of the Middle East and heading to Europe, they stop in Israel to nourish themselves, to feed and to prepare for that jump across the Mediterranean to wherever they're going. So when Shmulik Friedman was talking about this, it really surprised me because I really didn't know about the natural and the environmental damage that was being done. And it was really touching to me. And it was an amazing 2 weeks. We were stationed along in the Negev, along the Gaza border, pretty much the whole way. We were seeing, I don't know, anywhere from 15 to 40 fires a day. Most of these are wildfires, in addition to just the run-of-the-mill calls that would come in. And it was really quite an experience. And I have to share just a quick story. So along the Gaza border, the Israel Fire and Rescue Services, they use armor-plated, bulletproof fire engines along the south. So I've been a firefighter for 8 years. I've never knew anything like this even existed. Part of the reason is because in America, we would never need something like this because we don't fight fires while under fire from the states that border our country. So this was really eye-opening to me. And we're in the little demilitarized zone between Gaza and Israel, fighting some fires. And the IDF, of course, is there doing overwatch and providing security. And all of a sudden we're told, hey, everyone has to take cover behind the fire engine. And by the way, we're wearing bulletproof vests and Kevlar helmets on top of our firefighting gear. which again is something I've never experienced or seen in my life. And so we're taking cover behind the fire truck. There's smoke and fire and embers burning and swirling around us. And I look over to my friend and I was like, this was not in the brochure. They're like, come to Israel, it'll be fun. You put out some fires, you can see the country. I mean, I wasn't prepared for this. That's another one of my moments where I was like, what did I get myself into? But the Israeli people are just so amazing. They are so passionate. The entire country basically has PTSD, to be honest with you, dealing with the rocket attacks and the suicide attacks and the bombings. And I just don't think most people realize how fortunate we are in this country. And to have, even though we have our problems, it's nothing like in other places. But despite all of these challenges, the Israeli people, they persevere. They are some of the most amazing people I have ever encountered. When I did an interview after a big fire outside of Sderot, and it was on TV. And once Israelis realized there were Americans in the country, they started coming to the fire station. They were driving from hours away, 3-4 hours, bringing us food, and of course, Israelis food. They were bringing us food, and their kids made arts and crafts, and it was amazing. And I have a picture. I wasn't planning on showing you pictures tonight, but Ari, at some point, I would like to show the picture of me putting my helmet on one of the Israeli children's heads, and they have family taking pictures. It was an outpouring of love and support that I just didn't expect. And it was amazing to see the people responding to the fact that we were there, and they were all asking and coming like, what are you guys doing here? They couldn't believe we were there. And they were like, thank you for coming. Why would you come here? They're like, you're not Jewish. And I would, say, even though I know I look Jewish. And it was just incredible. It was just an incredible thing. And I tell them, listen, we're here because we have to answer that call, and we have to make sure that we can help our friends in Israel. And so it was just really an amazing experience. I've never been in a war zone before. There were tanks flying around and drones, and it was just really incredible. But I was glad to be there. And when that call comes again, I'm happy to go back.
Well, Aston, on many, many levels, thank you. And folks, I think you can maybe see what I meant in May of 2019 when I thought I was just going to stay for 5 minutes and leave with a plate full of sushi. That began this long journey. And Gloria, equally, as I hear her story and I get to know her better and better, I just remain so inspired. I think we have questions, right? And I guess we have another 20-30 minutes to have a conversation and dialogue, but I'll turn it back to our host.
Yeah, let's encourage everybody as the questions start pouring in, that I had a few questions, and if Gloria is able to come back, first I want to point out how many times you didn't get chills from Gloria speaking about the Jerusalem embassy in the Guatemalan embassy in Jerusalem being the second embassy there. And if you didn't get chills from Ashton's story about being in Israel at a time of war, remember those stories when we're thinking about how come nobody who's not Jewish ever speak about against anti-Semitism or goes to Israel and stands proudly with each other when times are tough for the Jewish community. We have here 2 out of 8 amazing partners who are standing up without having to do so because they know it's the right thing to do. And so something to think about. So the first question that I see from Jenny before I ask my own question is about what is it like, Aston, to maybe leave your family in the United States while you're going to war for in Turn of the Lights and for Gloria. Was your family there when you were able to open the Guatemalan embassy in Jerusalem, and how did that feel to see the doors and the cutting the ribbon and opening the embassy? Gloria, you're muted.
Okay, I don't know if Aston wants to answer first.
Oh, please go ahead, Gloria.
Okay, yes, definitely. So not all my family was there, because some of my brothers and sisters, my brother was there, but I'm one of 5 sisters. and one brother. My brother was there. Some of my sisters couldn't attend. My daughter was definitely there. My parents were there. So it was a beautiful, beautiful experience to be able to finally get there. And on that beautiful day where right before the ribbon cutting, so months before, I had the honor of actually translating the first conversation between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Jimmy Morales, the first meeting they had in person after the decision. Actually, it was the first meeting ever, but it was the first meeting after the decision in Washington, D.C., and that was an amazing experience. But the day of the opening of the embassy in Jerusalem, I was asked to translate the conversation between Sarah Netanyahu and Patricia Morales, which is the First Lady of Guatemala. And that was an amazing, amazing experience to see a completely different type of conversation between these two women right before the ribbon cutting. So it was, again, everything felt kind of surreal. And it's an interesting thing to see, not only the opening during the day, there was very few people that were allowed to be in the opening during the day. Maybe I think we had a maximum of 60 or 70 people that were allowed inside the embassy because of the space and security issues, etc. But then at night, we had a beautiful reception at the King David Hotel with 300, 400 people. And that was another, amazing, amazing experience. So that I would say that whole week, and mind you, we have to take into account that 2 days before was the US embassy open. And I was invited to that. My family didn't get to go to that, but I was invited to that. And I was also, a surreal experience. So that whole week was one of those moments where you're stepping inside of a chapter in history. And it truly was beautiful.
Yeah. So if I can answer that, well, I would tell you what my family thought is they thought I was nuts. Just being honest. So my mother, is being very motherly. She was very obviously concerned. The day before we were supposed to leave, the IDF shot down a Syrian plane, and there were some dust ups in the north. So it was a very volatile time. Of course, then we had to deal with the issues with the kites and the balloons in the south. But, I've always been a person who likes to sort of live on the edge a little bit. I'm also a pilot. I fly small planes. I'm a firefighter. I go into buildings that are on fire, which is not all that safe to do. So, while I didn't know what I was getting myself into, I was excited about trying it and trying something different, trying something new. And I will tell you, when I realized that, the excrement hit the ventilation system was when I was on the flight coming into Israel. And right as we crossed over into Israeli airspace, they told us that everyone had to take their seats now that we're in Israeli airspace and you can't get up. And that was when it hit me, like, what in the world did I do? Like, what did I do? And it just kind of went from there. But I tell you, there were a lot of unknowns, and driving through and seeing like checkpoints and, looking online, I had to download the Red Alert app. You got to download this app in case there's missile attacks. I was like, did you say missile attacks? Did you say missile attacks? So it's definitely different. It was different, but now, I've been there twice now, so I'm a little bit used to it, and it's not so bad anymore. I do live in South Florida. Miami is a dangerous place too. So, hey, what do you
Miami can certainly be a dangerous place, yes. Especially if you're driving up and down.
Oh, the drivers here are terrible. Just ask Ari. He's been driving down here. He's beside himself.
That's on your third visit, you get a free falafel. So you'll be fine. Gloria, I wanted to ask you, and this is a great question, and also ask, and feel free to reach out. What is the courage that it takes a country like Guatemala, seeing Central and South America are turning the other way around? They're radicalizing to becoming closer allies to Iran and to Syria and to Russia and to authoritarian governments. For a small country like Guatemala to be leading the path towards the right way to standing up against anti-Semitism and be really the first brave Latin American country to recognize Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Israel. What type of courage does it take, and what type of leader does it take to stand up to anti-Semitism? And Aston, I wonder if any of your experiences led you to say, I am standing up for anti-Semitism because the experiences that our community share together is something that I cannot be silenced anymore.
So I would start by saying that for Guatemala, it takes not only leadership. I think it goes beyond just who's elected, but it's also about who's active. And I'm a huge proponent of people actually speaking up. And I believe that in Guatemala, we have great groups, not only the Jewish community, but also we have great leaders who speak up and who advance the causes that we believe are the right causes for our country. For example, while we were in what I call the second battle, right? The battle between the president had already made the decision to return the embassy to Jerusalem and the event actually taking place. During those months, we created a group called ATFI. And ATFI is, it's actually kind of cute, but we call it ATFI, it's ATFI, and it's the A team for Israel. And ATFI is a group of Christian leaders and Jewish leaders from the Jewish community. The Jewish community in Guatemala, so that you know, it's a very small community. People think it's about 1,000 members, but it's closer to 600 members. So that's it. You know, it's 600 members of the Jewish community, but then you have a lot of Christian evangelicals in Guatemala who are very pro-Israel, yet at the same time had never actually connected to the Jewish community. So that's something else that I was involved in, my brother was involved in bringing the two groups together. We had the first meeting of pastors and leaders from the Jewish community in those months. We did initiatives together. We printed these bumper stickers that said Jerusalem, the eternal capital of Israel. We had digital campaigns that we pushed. I mean, we did so many things, kind of like grassroots efforts. Now, when it comes to what's happening to the rest of the Central American countries, then that encompasses even more groups, right? Like conservative groups that are also very pro-Israel. So one of the interesting things that stemmed out of the decision of President Morales was that all of a sudden the very extreme left groups, the nonprofit organizations that's supported by European entities, etc., who tend to be very, I don't even want to use the word liberal because it goes way beyond liberal. It's very extreme left. They now all of a sudden started attacking all of us who were pro-Israel, because then being pro-Israel became a different standard, right? And my family was personally attacked. Our businesses were boycotted for a few months. We saw all kinds of things happening. We got featured in very derogatory news articles. And there was a 84-page dossier that was done by the left, where literally the only thing I think they didn't spell out in terms of not only my family, my parents, their siblings, my cousins, and all of our involvement. I think the only thing that they left out was, our measurements and our weight, but everything else they knew. So what does it take? It takes for us to be courageous and to stand up and do the right thing no matter what. What are we doing in terms of anti-Semitism? I mean, I'm very involved in lots of campaigns, and it's just beyond Guatemala. I actually live in Miami. I sit on 8 different pro-Israel organization boards, and I do tons and tons of stuff. But what I've come to know is 2 things. One is we need to learn to cross the street and to speak with our allies and to collaborate with our allies and cooperate and do things together. What we did when we created ATFI was something that should have been done in Guatemala, who's so pro-Israel, should have been done 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and we would be so advanced. I believe we truly need to make friends on the other side of the street, meaning make yourself, a Christian friend, an evangelical friend, someone who also believes in the same things you believe, who also loves Israel and is willing to stand up for what's right. And I also tell my Christian friends, make at least one Jewish friend, because if you have a Jewish friend, there would be no anti-Semitism. It would be eradicated right there. So those are my thoughts on that.
Awesome. So yeah, could you repeat that question one more time, Aaron? I'm so sorry.
So I was talking about what power do you, besides from the adventure, by going to Israel and fighting the fires at a time where it's a time of war, it's a time of conflict, you're also standing up against anti-Semitism and telling people, I am not afraid to stand up with what's right in the world. So what was that inspiration for you, and what are you doing now that you're back in beautiful Miami when we're seeing the rise of anti-Semitism in America? How can our Christian and other faith partners can stand up to that, and how can they support us the way that you did?
That's a great question. So before we left Sderot in 2008, former Israel ambassador David Friedman and the commissioner, the leader of Israel Fire and Rescue Services, a gentleman named Didi Simki, came and met with us in Sderot. And one of the things that the commissioner of Israel Fire and Rescue Services said and asked of us is, when you go back to the United States, will you please tell everyone about what you saw here? Will you share your experiences? Will you be an ambassador for us? And will you help us? And I actually took that request and I really ran with it when I got back. From almost the moment I hit the ground, I was starting to do talks and speaking at different organizations, speaking at different events, going to college campuses. I have been online engaging with people and really trying to project out into the world a very pro-Israel message in order to not only educate people, because a lot of anti-Semitism comes from ignorance. And ignorance is not an insult. Ignorance means a lack of knowledge. And as Gloria so pointed out, most people, there aren't that many Jews out there. Most people don't know anyone who's Jewish. So the only thing they know is what they maybe, see on conspiracy theory sites or some stupid YouTube video, which of course they take as fact. So it's trying to educate the public out there to understand what an amazing, beautiful culture there is within Judaism and the Jewish people. Just ideas of tikkun olam, where you're out there trying to heal the world and repair the broken world that's out there. And as Ben Gurion said when he announced that the gates of Israel were open in 1948, that we need to shine a light out into the world. And Israel has done that with the advancement in technology, startup companies, and medicine, robotics, artificial intelligence. Israel is at the forefront of a lot of these industries, and most people don't know that. Most people don't know anything about that. So it's very important for me, and I think I have a unique position, not only because I'm just tall, dark, and handsome, but I'm also not Jewish. So for me to go into colleges and to be saying the things that I say, I think it carries more weight, because if I was Israeli or Jewish, they'd say, oh, of course you're saying that because you're Jewish, but I'm not Jewish. And so I think that it makes me a very dangerous, powerful weapon, that I am using my talents for spreading that message and trying to do what I can. When I travel and I speak, so since I've come back in 2018, I've been speaking all over the country. And when I'm on a flight going somewhere and someone says, hey, what do you do? I tell them, I don't say I'm a firefighter. I don't say my business, what I do in my business. I tell them I'm a pro-Israel speaker. I want to invite that conversation. And I don't shy away from it. Sometimes that's met with, oh, that's wonderful, and I've been to Israel and I'm Jewish and whatever. Sometimes it's met with skepticism or concerns, or they ask questions. And I enjoy engaging in those situations, because it gives me an opportunity to bring somebody over. If everyone in the movement brought one person along, we would double in size. And we have to keep being on that outreach. My best friend, Michael Yavner, who is the one who got me involved. You know, he for years, he would invite me to things. Oh, the Jewish Federation is doing an event. There's the speaker from the DC coming in. He's going to talk about the Middle East. Come and attend. He was, for years, I didn't always go, but for years he was doing that. And when he made that call, he had been working on me for years. Hey, they're sending firefighters to Israel. Do you want to go? I was like, yes, I want to go. So it's going to take all of us to continue to speak out, to speak up, and to push back and fight. For the first time in my lifetime, there are sitting members of Congress who are openly hostile to Israel. I didn't think I would ever see that. So the absolute and ultimate thing we all need to make sure we do is we need to vote. This in support of Israel is bipartisan. It's not a political issue. It doesn't matter to me who the prime minister of Israel is. It doesn't matter. My support for Israel is not political. It's not political. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me who is in charge over there. It makes absolutely no difference. The Israeli people are who need our support. The Jewish culture and the Jewish people need our support. And that's why I will continue to speak out. Matter of fact, I'm getting ready to go on a college tour, going outside of a Jewish audience into a more secular audience, which is a much more hostile crowd. But I'm willing to do it. Listen, I'm a fireman. I like it hot. I don't mind. I'll go and take the heat. And I'm willing to do that because all we have to do is convert one at a time, convince one person at a time of the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful nature of Jewish people. All I have to do is invite them to a Jewish event. There's always the best food. It's about 35 minutes. I'll tell you one thing about Jewish, the events are fantastic. They're short. You know, I grew up in a Baptist church. Our church started at 8:30. It was over at 2. I've never been to a Jewish ceremony that lasted that long. I was like, I would convert just for the short events, you know? So what can I say? We have to just bring everybody in and show them what a beautiful people that we're talking about. And I think if we do that, we'll make some headway.
I'd like to give Gordon an opportunity just in case she has to go. I know she's at a gala, and Ambassador Friedman is going to talk to her about his book maybe, but Ari's book is more important than his book. His book is second on the bestseller list.
No, honestly, the event just started. Like they just finished singing the national anthem in Hatikva, so we're good. I think I'm good in terms of timing. I'm reading some of the comments and the questions, and I'm very, very grateful for the beautiful comments. And Vicky was asking if since I was little, if I always didn't take no for an answer. And I just want to answer that because in reality, so my mother actually built us up, all 6 of her children, to live out our dream, to live out our purpose. And they empowered us to go after whatever we wanted to in life, right? So I have to give them props for that. But I am going to say, when it came to working towards this decision, there was a moment where I threw in the towel, right? So in my heart, I wanted us to actually make the decision before Donald Trump would make the decision. So I was pushing, and I knew that he had deferred the first time and that he was not going to defer the second time. And I just kept on pushing and talking to the foreign minister and talking to my brother. And I'm like, he's going to make the decision. 6 months are coming up. He's going to make it. We need to do it first. And I kept on wanting to push. So when he made the decision and I saw that we were still kind of like in the same place, in the same plane, I threw in the towel. And that's where I just want to tell you that at some point we can push all we want. And again, I felt like this was something that Hashem had called me to do, not something that I was doing as I just wanted to do it. No, I felt like I was called to do it. When I saw that vision back in May 2017, I felt this was something I had to do. And I had the full understanding that this was going to happen before the end of the year, even though for years, diplomatically, there were efforts to try to get this done. In fact, 25 years before, there was a president in Guatemala that actually said he was going to do it, and then he retracted because of the pressure from the Arab countries. So at that point where I threw in the towel, that's where God decided to show me that he's sovereign and that when he does something, it's about him, it's not about us. It's not about whether we're willing or not willing. I mean, obviously when we're willing, he will use us, right? But at the point where I decided, I'm like, oh, forget it, Trump already made the decision. I was just like done. I really was done. Everything that happened from November 6th or 8th, I think, I don't know if it was 6 or 8, when he made the decision, till December, the end of December, when President Morales made the decision, that had very little to do with me. And that's the honest truth. And it's because I just kind of let the pressure off. But the ball was already rolling. And again, God had his timing. He is sovereign. At some point, we have to say, yes, we're willing vessels. You can use me. I'm going to push as much as you want me to push. But even in our moments of weakness, he shows us that he is strong. And when that he says go is go. And when he says stop is stop. So I just want to say that not always was I one to not take no for an answer.
Ari,
we've been,
we do have a
sorry,
question
Aaron.
for you. I see a few of the comments that we can say a second, but I wanted to ask you, you start your book talking about, I think every single person in the Zoom meeting remembers that Saturday morning when we started hearing the news and getting the notifications about the situation happening in Pittsburgh and the Tree of Life shooting. Not a single person doesn't get chills just thinking about it today, and all the work that we've been doing. And you talk about it on the start of your book, how you were walking and you hear about the news and how you were looking for a way of trying to understand and trying to connect and trying to find the stories to inspire you. And then all of a sudden you find this 8 great people that help you, inspire you, and take you out of a very dark moment after all the tragedies happening in your life. Where are you now? How are the stories helped you move from the darkness to the light? And how can we also get inspired the way that you got inspired to seek our own connections and start building our own 8 additional righteous people in our lives?
Well, Aaron, thank you. And thank you for friends in the community. I've been seeing the messages. So yeah, I'll say it again. I did not set out to write a book. For those that know my family, I always have thought maybe that, my father and my brother, who are PhDs, have the book smarts, and maybe I have street smarts, or at least pretend to. It's been an incredible journey. I'm still kind of scratching my head that I got a contract with Geffen Publishing, which is the oldest and largest publishing house in Israel, and it's been an exciting ride. Yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning, we've had in-person and virtual events all around the country. I think Aston opened up the door, and I know there's parents and grandparents of active students on different campuses, and we'd really love to have dialogue like this in the fall semester. We really welcome any ideas, whether it's congregation book clubs have reached out. I've never been to Tucson, but the Tucson Jewish Federation's flying me down, and the young woman from South Africa that I profile in 2 weeks, I think. So it's been an incredible momentum, and really quite humbling. I think to specifically answer your question, and I mentioned this in the epilogue at the end of the book. So without giving away the other 140 some pages preceding it, although I did have someone tell me they purchased this at Ben Gurion Airport and they finished it by the time they landed stateside. So it is a pretty easy read. I've had other people say they finished it in a Shabbos. So for those who haven't read, please, I hope I'm not giving anything away, but in the final few paragraphs, I talk about the meaning behind the title, which comes from a pasuk from a verse in Proverbs, the book of Proverbs, Mishlei. It goes as follows: that the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, and it shines ever brighter until the day is perfect. And the the meaning of this is kind of debated, as is every pasuk in our tradition, every verse in our tradition. But there was one in particular that I found. I did and continue to do a lot of text study. Folks might know the concept of a chavrusa partner, a one-on-one text study. But there was a particular story that stood out to me, and once again, you can see it at the very end of my book. But where two rabbis, they're out for their morning walk in ancient Israel. They think they know everything about our tradition inside and out. They're up there in the years, and then all of a sudden, it's a young child who inspires them and really teaches them something different. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the evening, our 22-month-old daughter, every day she kind of challenges and inspires myself, my wife, and just teaches us something brand new about this world, and particularly about what it means to be proud pro-Israel Jewish parents in today's world. So I'm not sure, Aaron, if that answers the question, but I work in Washington and we don't really answer questions. So
I think we're just, I'm just looking at the smiling faces about really, this is the first time, and I would like to thank Gloria, even though she had to leave, because she's attending another Jewish event, and Aston, who's still here. This is really the first time in a very, very long time that we get to hear two non-Jewish speakers talked about Israel in a way that inspired us all. And hopefully for those who are in the fans, I see Vicky here, we're going to be in Israel in less than a month. There is still time to sign up.
Aaron Goyam, we're not so bad after all, always. So we're not so bad.
No, absolutely not. And I'm telling you, if you want to come with us to Israel, we're going to be donating an ambucycle in honor of Dr. Mickey Offberg, who I see Eileen is here, and we miss him every single day, and we're always thinking of him. To hear two non-Jewish speakers talk about Israel the way that we speak about Israel in our community is something that it really touches our heart in a way that it has been a very long time because of the rise of anti-Semitism we've been experiencing every day. So I think you are a godsend to be here with us tonight, speaking about it, and most of all, speaking at college campuses and other not so friendly environments, because we hear all of the anti-Israel speakers and all of the hate and rhetoric happening at the college campuses right now, and to have you and to have Gloria and to have Ari bring in the speakers all across the United States and maybe even Canada at some point and other countries, it really inspires us to think that we're not alone, and for that we really can't thank you enough. So
thank you. I really appreciate that. And I don't know, Aaron, if there's time, but I would really love to share that picture. Is it okay if I share that picture?
Absolutely. Let me make sure that you're a co-host.
I don't have enough juice.
As Aaron's doing that, I'm going to make a shameless plug again that we've been honored to go to shuls, to day schools, to Federation, JCRC events. But I'm looking around the Zoom room, and I know that everyone has family members in other communities. And I think from strength to strength, that's what I've been writing and inscribing in these books. So really, please reach out and let's see how we can have this dialogue as the months progress.
And if I make another shameful plug, Ari is a donor to our community, even though he doesn't live here, as long with his wife, and he supports the work that we do in our community, and that's why we're so proud and happy to welcome him home, and really the support that he has provided us, and how the first thing he always says is I am a son of the Lehigh Valley, and that's where so if you have a house that you're selling for cheap that Ari's looking to move in, he's ready to send his kids to the Jewish day school and to rejoin the shul. So be in touch with him.
You can come stay at my house, Ari.
Awesome.
That's very, very kind. I think that's a longer discussion. First things first, we need to book return tickets from Miami Beach. We've been here for a month, and at some point we do need to leave. But no, thank you. But Aston, I'm looking forward to seeing that photo. And each of these events we've been doing,
here we go.
Aston shows photos, and I want to shake him and say, if you showed me these photos, it would have been so much easier to write your story. But I'm seeing them after the fact. So,
can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So this is at the Beersheba fire station. These are a picture of two children who came to the station, and that's me putting my helmet on one of the kids' heads, and they took a little family photo. But this was really one of the great moments for me. Just the people of Israel, just so amazing. The Israelis are so passionate. I have a quick story. I was in the Beersheba fire station one night, and there were two guys in the kitchen screaming at each other in Hebrew, just nose to nose. I mean, they were about to fight. And so I ran in to break them up, and they're like, no, it's okay. They're just trying to decide what we're having for dinner tonight. So, so the Israelis are so passionate. When they are talking together, they always seem like they're arguing, but it's the passion. They have so much passion. They're so direct, like, oh, why in the world would you wear that shirt with those shoes? Like, they're just very direct. And I love that about them. They are some of the most strong and powerful people I've ever seen. We can all learn so much from them. And I will continue to fight and help and see everything I can do for our friends in Israel, as well as the Jewish communities here in the United States. So I look forward to continuing this discussion, and I'm always here. I would love to connect with you all on social media. You can find me at Aston Bright, or astonbright.com is my website.
Baby.
Shameless plug here.
Sam,
And I look forward to staying in touch with Aaron and all of our friends in the Lehigh Valley.
I want
In the summer, I'm not coming there in the winter. It's too cold. I'll be there in the summer.
if you're in person, you will be getting a standing ovation right now, and if you're single, you will be getting connected with all the single women in our community. I'm not sure that's the right way to end, but I would like to thank you, Aston and Ari and Gloria, for this wonderful evening of inspiration. We really needed to have a night like this, especially after the day that we had watching the images from our friends and hearing the story. So again, I encourage you again, if you haven't made your gift to the campaign, we're in the 60-day challenge. Your gift is what allows the Jewish community to respond immediately when there is a crisis, where a Jew is in need. We are there because we are here for good. So thank you everybody for attending. Please be in touch with me if you need a copy of the book and you haven't received it yet. And wishing everybody a good night, and to remember everybody to say a prayer for peace. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everybody.